Hello, Texas. I've always wanted to try this. The stars at night are big and bright. Yes! Yes! God, I have always wanted to do that. My name is Russ Belville. I'm the executive director of 420 Radio. I'm the host of the Russ Belville Show. I worked with NORML for about 4 years as an outreach coordinator, and now I'm working with just about all the acronym organizations that are trying to end this stupid adult marijuana prohibition. My presentation today is entitled Debunking Goldilocks, the New Drug War Rhetoric, Analysis and Rebuttal of the Third Way, Kinder, Gentler Drug War Strategies of Kevin Sabet and Project Sam. How many people here know who Kevin Sabet is? Couple? All right. Eric up here, as your first speaker, gave you a great look at how legalization's changing and how public perceptions are changing. Don't for a minute think that our opposition is stupid. They see these changes too. They see the polls out there that show only 7% of Americans believe the drug war is working. They see the polls that show 52% of Americans believe we ought to regulate and tax marijuana. So they know they're losing, and they got to find a new way to shape their arguments. And what I'm going to show you today is some clips from some of their appearances on the Sunday news shows to give you an idea how they're going to try to fight, how they're changing their rhetoric, and what we can do to debunk some of that. I call this the Goldilocks frame. What's going on with the war on drugs rhetoric from their side at this point is they realize they're in the extreme. They realize they're the minority. They realize people don't buy what they're selling anymore. So what they're trying to do is to also paint us as an extreme. Their goal with this third way rhetoric is to try to say, well, locking people up, that's too hard. But legalizing is too soft. But forcing you all into rehab and P-tests, that's just right. And of course, a lot of these people are backed by the rehab industry that wants to turn that pipeline from, the marijuana smoker into the jail. They want to turn that into a pipeline of the marijuana smoker into the rehab center. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Oh, man. All right, it doesn't want to play that. All right, let's see here.
He sounds better when he's not talking.
Yeah, he sure does. Fortunately, I have notes on this, and so we will. Something that needs to go? I apologize for this. Running it off a USB stick isn't always the best thing. All right, so we'll just see if we can make this. Yeah. All right. Well, I will just have to ad-lib this one. All right, so this is Kevin Sabet. He's from Project Sam, and what he sets here with the Goldilocks frame is this idea, one of the quotes that he says is, for too long the debate has been lock 'em up or light 'em up, right? That he's going to present a new third way that is a method here of continuing the drug war without all of the downsides of it, the racial disparities, the terrible long incarceration sentences. But this is a false dichotomy that they're setting up, something that we in rhetoric call a straw man. They're trying to paint it as if there's only two choices, lock them up, line them up, or prohibition, that are both extreme, and then they can come in as the cavalry, ride in and say, hey, we've got the sane solution. We're the rational adults in the room. But the true dichotomy is really this. Either adults are punished for using a substance safer than alcohol, or they are not. That's it. And they still advocate for punishing people that use a substance safer than alcohol. The way to counteract this is an extreme, we're the middle ground, is to don't let them out of that frame. Put them back into the extreme frame. When I talk to Kevin Sabet and people like this that bring this kind of dichotomy up, I always bring it back to the personal. Why do you want to put me in a cage? Oh, no, we don't want to put you in a cage. We just think, no, I smoke marijuana every day. I'm the guy you're talking about who is the everyday smoker. Why do you want to put me in a cage? Well, we can't say, you specific. No, me specifically, Kevin. Why do you want to put me in a cage? They can't run away from that argument because everything they've got in their arsenal is about arrests and then have a screening, an evaluation, a rehab, P-tests, and if you fail them, you go to jail. Keep bringing it back to eventually you put a pot smoker in jail because they're not running away from that at all. Next part, a little thing I call the Sabbat conjecture. One of the big selling points that we've got with marijuana legalization right now is the economic selling point. You know, everybody's looking at their bottom line and realizing that, hey, if we tax and regulate marijuana, we can make some money off of these people. Now, one of the ways that Kevin Sabet likes to try to fight against this, and this is Patrick Kennedy, by the way, former Rhode Island representative, who crashed his car high on OxyContin and alcohol in 2006 and was given a ride home by the cops. But anyway, Patrick Kennedy brings up this point that we have alcohol and it's legal, and we have tobacco and it's legal, and we raise about $40 billion every year. $40 billion. But it costs us $400 billion in the costs from drunk driving and lung cancer and emphysema and cirrhosis and so on. Lost productivity, all of that. So their argument here with the Sabbat conjecture is we can't legalize marijuana. We'd never make the money up that we would spend in all of the harm, right? Just like alcohol and tobacco. They cost more than the taxes bring in. Well, there's a simple debunk to this. Marijuana is not alcohol or tobacco. Alcohol and tobacco are toxic and addictive. Of course they cost society more. Of course they're going to cause more costs to our society. So that's the first part, is you point out that marijuana is not alcohol or tobacco. They want to pretend like it is, because alcohol is harmful, tobacco is harmful, and then they can add those harms by association onto marijuana. So take that away from them. Marijuana is not alcohol or tobacco. Number 2 point, marijuana already exists. It's not like we legalize marijuana and poof, suddenly there's marijuana. There's plenty of marijuana. Lots of people are using it now. So if there is a cost, and I don't think there's much of a cost, but if there is, we're paying it now, aren't we? There's people smoking pot now, aren't they? And we're paying that cost and taking in zero in taxes. So if there is going to be a cost for marijuana, why not at least tax it and get some of the revenue or all of the revenue back for the costs? And finally, we're spending money trying to prohibit marijuana. We're spending money. So it's not even the fact that we're not taking in taxes. We're putting out money in a futile attempt to try to stop people from smoking marijuana. Whew. Down just a I didn't expect it to be so loud. Sorry about that. I bring this up too because this is a third point that they make in their attacks, is they want to scare people about the possibility of corporatized, marketed marijuana. And this is actually gaining a lot of ground, especially in that soccer mom demographic, where they start to fear like, oh no, if we legalize pot, there's going to be billboards and Super Bowl ads, and there's going to be, Budweiser frogs and Joe Camel and all that kind of stuff. In fact, Patrick Kennedy, that's one of his big things. On this particular Sunday show, he was saying, next thing you know, we're going to wake up, there's going to be another big tobacco. It's going to be called big marijuana, and it's going to go after your kids. It's going to market to your kids, because we know what big tobacco did. And once again, this is another example of them trying to take the harm of something bad and attach it to marijuana through association. So, I always like to do this part. Have you seen this camel? He's been missing since 1998. He is an anthropomorphic dromedary with genital-looking face. He used to hang out with the Marlboro Man, used to be seen at NASCAR's Winston Cup in the 20th century. Has anyone seen Joe Camel lately? I work with people in their 20s and I say Joe Camel and they go, what? They don't even know what Joe Camel is. And my point on this is, when they bring up the big tobacco, they're pretending as if we never learned anything from big tobacco. right? We went 60 years with tobacco making up stuff about their product and having doctors smoke Chesterfields and Lucky Strike means fine tobacco and Joe Camel and the Marlboro Man. Why would we repeat that? We learned our lesson from big tobacco. And this is how we can rebut this, is say, hey, we agree with you. Shouldn't be marketed to kids. We agree with you. There shouldn't be cartoons, running the advertising. We agree with you on that. We learned our lesson from big tobacco. And in fact, in Washington and Colorado right now, as these task forces are putting the rules together, they're putting forth those kind of ideas that we're not going to advertise it. We're going to keep it away from kids. We're going to have restrictive packaging so it doesn't look like a Kit Kat bar or a Butterfinger or something. So we've learned our lesson from big tobacco. And again, it's a false analogy. It's a false analogy. Big tobacco had to lie about its product because its product is toxic and addictive. We don't have to lie about marijuana as a product because it's not toxic or addictive. The things we've been saying about marijuana since Keith founded NORML are pretty much true. We're willing to admit that might not be the healthiest thing to do. Inhaling smoke in your lungs usually isn't. It might not be the wisest thing to do, but if we have a right to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol, we certainly have a right to our marijuana. And then, of course, here is the really effective way of debating the big marijuana. And that is, we have a big marijuana. It's called the Sinaloa cartel. It's called the Juarez cartel. It's called 1 million teenagers in America who sell weed in their high schools. That's big marijuana. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a little less afraid of Joe Camel than I am the Sinaloa cartel. I say, we put this forth to them and say, what are you afraid of with big corporate marijuana? Jobs being created? Tax revenue being raised? People that settle their disputes in courts instead of plata o plomo? Don't let them paint that. So don't let them paint that, paint this big marijuana as something scary. Part of politics is fear. And they've got this fear of this big corporate marijuana, so I like to attack them with a bigger fear. I'm more afraid of those Mexican cartels than I am of any corporation. Now, in this next idea, they have this concept that I call 2 drugs are enough. You'll hear this from the anti-legalization forces. They'll say, well, we've got alcohol and tobacco. We don't need another legal drug. We have so much problem with alcohol and tobacco. Why do we need another drug? Newsflash, marijuana's here. Again, we're not inventing marijuana when we legalize it. Marijuana's already here. There are 26.1 million adults in America who smoke marijuana annually. 26.1 million. That's more adults in America who will smoke pot this year than people in the state of Texas. There are more tokers than Texans. They say don't mess with Texas, don't mess with tokers. Any harms that exist from marijuana already exist. And we add to that the harms of prohibition. That was something that was mentioned in a previous talk here, is we got to convince the American people we don't have a marijuana problem, we have a prohibition problem. And again, there's nothing new about marijuana. The only question is how it should be controlled. I always like to bring the debate back to the market aspect of it because Project Sam and Kevin Sabet don't have an answer for this. They're all about the user. If we catch the user, we'll send them to rehab. All right, what are you going to do with the guy that grows a plant? Oh, he still goes to prison. What do you do with the guy that sells an ounce? Well, he still goes to prison. They don't have an answer for the market. And there is only one answer for the market, and that's legalization. No matter how much we may like or dislike marijuana as a society, we cannot repeal the law of supply and demand. So long as 26.1 million people are demanding it, someone's going to step up to supply it. Should it be murderous Mexican cartels, or should it be tax-paying, job-creating businesses? Always bring the debate back to the market because they can't answer that.
So this notion that we're going to give the green light of permissibility for people to think, oh, it's harmless, go ahead and experiment. Now, we know kids have access to this anyway, but we shouldn't be adding fuel to the fire.
Shouldn't be adding fuel to the fire because, if we made marijuana legal, everybody would think it's okay. Because if a drug is legal, it's permitted by society and everybody loves it and wish that you would smoke and use it more often, right? Like tobacco. How many tobacco smokers we got? Do you feel like the government thinks your smoking is okay? Do you feel like they're saying, yes, everybody smoke cigarettes, it's a wonderful thing? No, you can have a legal drug and still have societal disapproval of it, but we don't have people shooting up the streets over Marlboros and Camels. We don't have cartels running our tobacco industry. Oh, and of course, I love this part. The statistics now, more teenagers have actually tried marijuana than tried cigarettes at this point in American history. And now finally, I have to apologize. I was at the Baker Institute in Houston last year. I was debating Kevin Sabet. And before the debate, there was a dinner. We all got together and got to have a nice little dinner. And I got to talk to him. And I was kind of making this joke about, yeah, I'm glad you're somewhat sensible. I was kind of buttering him up. Glad you're somewhat sensible. You're not like those crazy drug warriors who say, oh, this isn't your father's Woodstock weed. And he went, oh, that's good. And he has been using it ever since. So I apologize. I keep forgetting drug warriors aren't that creative. We're the creative, talented, intelligent, attractive ones. And I gave him a freebie, so I'm sorry. Let's see if I got this one here. Yeah, sorry, there's a Kennedy there saying, this is not your father's Woodstock weed. This is not the marijuana that you smoked innocuously in your dorm rooms back in the 60s. Today's marijuana is 6 to 7 to 8 times stronger than it was 20 years ago. Really? 20 years ago was 1993. That's when Snoop Dogg dropped Doggy Style. I don't remember rolling down the street smoking ditchweed, sipping on gin and juice. I think it was doing okay back then.
Today's pot is not the Woodstock weed our parents smoked in the dorm room innocuously. It's 5 to 6 times greater in potency and strength.
5 to 6 times greater in potency and strength. Kevin Sabet says marijuana is 5 to 6 times greater in potency and strength. This is a chart I pulled from Kevin Sabet's own PowerPoint. This is the chart of potency as measured by the potency monitoring program at the University of Mississippi Pot Farm. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but back in the 80s, pot was about 4% THC, and now it's up to about 9. Now, I went to public school, but where I come from, 4 times 6 is not 9. So, has the marijuana gotten a little bit more potent? Yeah, it's gotten on average a bit more potent. But when they bring up that 5 to 7 times more potent, what they're trying to do is to separate the Woodstock generation from our support. They're trying to turn marijuana into a new drug that didn't exist back when they had their good feelings about it. So some of the ways that we can fight that. Well, gosh, if that Woodstock weed was so innocuous, can we just legalize that? You know, like we legalized 3-2 beer when Prohibition first ended. It started with 3-2 beer, and then it went up. We had better beer and liquor and so on as time went on. So Kevin, if it was so innocuous, can we legalize 3-2 beer, 3-2 weed to start, I guess, whatever the equivalent of that would be? And again, don't let them conflate marijuana with alcohol. This whole potency thing is built on this idea. A lot of people, most people don't smoke pot. You know, Keith was mentioning that, right? So when people have to hear about marijuana and its effects and the laws and everything, they have to analogize it in their brains to something they know. And what they know is alcohol. So, and we've kind of been part of this too. We keep saying, treat it like alcohol, treat it like alcohol. So they've got alcohol in their mind and they think, well, gosh, if I drank a quart of beer, that would be okay. But if I drank a quart of whiskey that's more potent, I'd probably die. And that's where this potency argument's happening. They're trying to convince people that somehow more potent marijuana is more deadly or more dangerous or changes you somehow. Don't let them get away with that either. Where are my older tokers? Panama Red, Thai Stick, Maui Wowie, Acapulco Gold. There's always been potent marijuana, and y'all didn't go crazy, did you? Well. And the other important thing is to help people understand that don't smoke marijuana what its pharmacokinetics are, and that's just a big fancy $20 word for how it gets you high. People, when they drink alcohol, you have a drink, it's a good drink, have another drink, it's a good drink, have another drink, oh, it's a good drink, oh man, I'm drunk, right? It comes on after a while. Smoking pot, oh, you feel it immediately. And the more that the people who don't smoke marijuana can understand that marijuana is what we call self-titrating, you can feel its effects relatively immediately. The more people that don't smoke pot that know that, the less they can make this stick. Because, well, gosh, if it's more potent and you feel it immediately, Used to be, back in the day, you'd smoke a joint of some average marijuana. It was, oh, okay, I'm high. Today's marijuana, oh, I'm high, right? But you're still getting to the same place. And the more that our opponents and the more that the average public can understand that, the better. There are two arguments that they've got against us that have some effectiveness these days. One is called SMOF, stoned mayhem on the freeways. Other people have talked about that. I'm going to talk about WOTC. What about the children? Because when you bring up the children, all logic shuts down. Any parent will tell you, if your kid's hurt, if your kid's in danger, the last thing you're doing is calculations and logical thought. You're running to help your kid. And so they're going to use this. They're going to pound this. Oh my God, we legalize, it's going to be bad for the kids. It's going to be bad for the kids.
You know that 1 out of every 6 kids that try marijuana will become addicted to it. Okay, that's not 6 out of 6, but that's probably something and plenty to worry about.
1 out of 6 kids who try marijuana will become addicted to it. I have to question the word addiction in this sentence because addicted in his definition is an adult who uses marijuana. That's an addict, So anybody who drinks a beer is an addict, I guess. Now, about 4.4 million teenagers have tried marijuana, but there are 10.6 million adults that are using marijuana over 100 days a year. So if every year there's a cohort of teenagers, 4.4 million of them every year, and 1 out of 6 of them are getting addicted, by now wouldn't there be more than 10 million people smoking pot all the time? Those numbers don't work. They don't add up. In fact, there's some great charts you can show of the, I don't have them on this slide, but of the age at which people smoke pot. And it goes like age 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then it just drops. So much for the addiction, right? Most people smoke pot when they're young and rarely continue to do it in the rest of their life. And the other thing about what about the children, I talked about how you have to flip fear on them. They're playing a fear card on you. Oh my God, what about the children? Flip it. Yeah, what about the children? Did you know that 44% of kids know someone in their high school that deals drugs? 2 out of 5 kids, more than 2 out of 5, know someone in their high school that deals drugs. And on the menu, 91% of the time is marijuana. 1% of the time they can get booze. So what about the children? Why are we letting the children have an open air free marijuana market in their high schools? How come the children aren't able to get cigarettes and alcohol so easily? Why is it that when I was in high school, and I think I've got this on a slide here, this is a great chart, and there's another over there, you might be able to see it. That blue line up along the top is the lifetime alcohol use of 12th graders, mapped all the way back to 1976. The red line is tobacco use, lifetime. Have they ever tried tobacco? And the green line, the light green line there, not this dark one, but this lighter one, is lifetime use of marijuana. Have they ever tried marijuana? Now, when I was in high school in the early 80s, like 82 to 85, 90% of my schoolmates had tried alcohol. 9 out of 10 kids I went to school with drank. 7 out of 10 kids I went to school with smoked tobacco. And about 6 out of 10 smoked pot, although I was not one of them. Nowadays, the kids graduating, 7 out of 10, not 9 out of 10, 7 out of 10 have drank. Over the past generation, we've gotten 2 out of 10 kids to never try alcohol. We didn't arrest a single adult to pull that off. Also, tobacco use has dropped to 40% lifetime use among teenagers, from 70 to 40. We got 3 out of 10 kids to never touch tobacco. We didn't arrest a single adult to pull it off. What did we do? Well, right there, about 1986-87, federal government did a little strong arming, unconstitutional in my book, but that's another rant, did a little strong arming to force all the states to raise their drinking age to 21. Bam! 21 drinking age, plummet. From that point on, 90% drops to about 80% within the span of about 5 years. What do we do with tobacco? Right here, 1997-98, the Tobacco Master Settlement lawsuit, federal government sued Big Tobacco, forced them to put the smokes behind the counter, lock them up, keep them away from kids, put out the truth ads, the clogged lung commercials and all that. Tobacco use drops from 65% to 40%. We have proven There are ways to get kids to stop using or even trying toxic, addictive, legal, highly regulated, very marketed drugs without arresting a single person to do it. Certainly we can do that with marijuana. Of course, we have the stone mayhem on the freeways. I'm going to pass that one. Loud. So sorry. I didn't expect that to be so loud. So stone mayhem on the freeways. That's their latest argument here. The fact that if we legalize marijuana, all of a sudden the roads will be clogged with stoners and will be wrecks and death and mayhem. Well, one nice effect of legalizing marijuana in Washington and Colorado is that we've been able to actually see what happens with driving when we legalize marijuana. Now, Washington State had a very controversial 5 nanogram per se DUI, and I don't want to go into all of that. But because marijuana is legalized, the local news station up there, KIRO, was able to do a demonstration where they brought out 3 medical marijuana patients. This young lady, I call her All Day Addie. She admits to being a medical marijuana patient who smokes every day and in fact arrived to the test having smoked that day. They also went up with a guy who was like a weekend smoker. Every now and then, every weekend or so he'd smoke. And then a third who was once a year, very rare marijuana smoker. Addie showed up at the test. They tested her. She was at 16 nanograms per milliliter. She was 3 times the legal limit, got behind with the driving instructor in the car with her, passed with flying colors. The guy who said, I would never pull her over. She's doing just fine. They did the same with the weekend toker and the occasional toker. Now, they were below the limit. They hadn't smoked that day, and they got out, they drive fine. And then what they did is every 20 minutes, they gave these 3 people a 0.3 gram bowl of marijuana to smoke, and then put them out on the course again. Addie at 0.3 drove fine. At 0.6 drove fine. At 0.9 drove fine. She was 1.5 grams into her marijuana, 0.9 grams into her marijuana smoking, 3 bowls over the span of an hour, 11 times Washington's legal limit. She was at like 56 nanograms per milliliter. And she drove very well. In fact, the cop, they had a DRE cop that was watching this as she was driving around, and they asked, well, would you pull her over? And she said, borderline, she was okay. Can you imagine any police officer watching a person driving at 0.88 blood alcohol and saying, oh, it's borderline, he's driving okay? Would never happen. So we have this advantage now that marijuana legalization is passed. When they throw all this driving stuff at us, now we can actually do the statistics and the testing and the study to prove what we all know. Marijuana smoking, as far as danger on the roadways, is on a long list of about 15 things, and it's probably about number 14, behind texting on your cell phone, eating something, smacking your kids in the back, whatever else it might be. It's not harmless. There is a risk. But Paul Armentano, in the presentation he did last week at Aspen, showed that there was like a 1.08 crash risk ratio with pot smokers. 1.08 just means, 1 to 1 would be even chances. So this is like a 1.08 to 1. A small chance, right? Antihistamines and penicillin came out at 1.12. People were more likely to wreck on penicillin and antihistamine than they were on pot. Also, we can look at traffic fatality rates. Well, they're worried that if we legalize marijuana, suddenly people will be smoking and driving. Well, we legalized medical marijuana. What happened in the states that legalized medical? All their traffic fatality rates went down. What we got here on the blue line is United States deaths per miles driven. And I've done per 100 million in this case, so it'll fit on the same graph. The red line is Colorado, and the green line is Washington. And all of their traffic fatality deaths have plummeted, have dropped. Now, it's not all, I'm not saying marijuana made the roads safer. Lots of things made the roads safer. We got seatbelt laws and, better patrols and so on. But if legalizing medical use in Washington and Colorado made things worse, it's not showing up on the graphs. And for comparison's sake, I put Texas in. Texas is that solid line, kind of at the same level as the red one with Colorado. And then Texas, you're still having more traffic deaths here per miles driven than people in legalized marijuana states. And my final thing on that, you know about Marinol, right? 100% THC capsules suspended in sesame oil, Schedule 3 by the federal government. Because THC in a plant is dangerous, but when you put it in a pill, it's magic. This is the warning on a bottle of Marinol. Patients receiving treatment with Marinol capsules should be specifically warned not to drive until it is established they are able to tolerate the drug and perform such tasks safely. So apparently when it's in pill form, I can be trusted to judge my impairment and whether or not I can handle the forklift. But if it's a plant, well, you're in automatic danger. Most people will recognize that makes no sense. So you just say right here, the federal government themselves, when it comes to THC, says, if you can handle it, you can handle it. Final thing on this, believe this is the last one here, when they attack medical marijuana. Medical marijuana has been the biggest thorn in their side because who can look at a person in a wheelchair, a person with cancer, and say, no, you need to suffer. You should just suffer. It's really hard to do. And they know they've lost this argument. They know that about 80% of the American public supports medical marijuana. So what they're trying to do right now is they're playing what I call run out the clock. You know football. This is Texas, right? You got the lead, run out the clock until the game's over. They're trying to run out the clock on plant medical marijuana until they can get pill medical marijuana or spray medical marijuana or inhaler medical marijuana, whatever it might come in. They want to find a way to take the smoking out of it. It's the thing they hate the most, and the high out of it. And that way, once they've pulled that off, they can give you a medical marijuana that takes care of all the patients and provides no incentive for them to have a raw plant. Kennedy, one of his little statements, they like to make this little statistical thing. They like to say, well, you know, in Colorado and Oregon, 90% of the people getting medical marijuana are just getting it for pain. They don't have real diseases like cancer and AIDS and all that. Because, you know, pain is no big deal, right? Well, here's their little statistical trick that they're doing. In the Oregon registry, when you register for medical marijuana, we got 55,000 patients. 52,000 of them are registered for pain. Oh my God, that's 90%. What they don't tell you is you can register for more than one condition. So if you have cancer, you think there's some pain involved? Got AIDS? You think there might be some pain involved? Got epilepsy? Could there be some pain involved? Most of these pain people they're talking about have a condition other than just pain. And when it comes to pain and marijuana, and this kind of shows you the example, right? These would be the people that have pain, and then these are all the other conditions on the Oregon program. It's a little math trick they like to do. What he's doing is he's dividing 51,000 by the total number of patients, 54,000, but the total number of conditions is close to 80,000. Pain only makes up 2/3 of the conditions that are actually being treated. And then they have this, a line that they say over and over again. You'll hear this from Project Sam all the time. We don't smoke opium to get the benefits of morphine. Why should we smoke marijuana to get the benefits of cannabis? They like to go morphine, opium kind of thing. Well, again, marijuana ain't opium. First of all, you're allowed to grow opium poppies in this country. You can actually grow them for decoration. Opium is highly addictive. And if a bomb went off and my leg was blown off and the only thing next to me was an opium pipe, you're damn well bet I'm going to smoke that to deal with the pain. The reason we don't smoke opium is because we have morphine. We don't have the morphine of marijuana yet. So what Kevin Sabet is doing when they say this kind of thing is, you cancer patients just need to wait just a little longer. Just suffer just a little longer. We can't have you smoking a joint. Just suffer a little longer till we can get these pills figured out. And don't let them stick with the smoking part of it. Marijuana can be vaporized, cooked, made into tinctures, made into oils. They also like to say, well, no medicine is smoked. And that's true. No medicine is smoked, but lots of medicines are inhaled. Nasal sprays, asthma inhalers, because that lung to blood to brain is a very effective way of dosing medicine. The other thing they try to do on this is they try to minimize the effect of marijuana prohibition and say nobody goes to jail for marijuana. Nobody goes to jail for marijuana. So few people go, it's not even worth us even legalizing. Here's how they get away with that statistic. They like to say very few people are in prison for simple, nonviolent possession of marijuana? Well, first they mean federal prison, not state. Most people are in state prisons. Second of all, there's all sorts of ways you can make it into jail or prison for marijuana that aren't simple possession, even though you were just simply possessing. Were you simply possessing with some friends? That might be distribution. Did you have too much pot on you at the time? Obviously possession for sale. Was your pot in separate baggies? Intent to deliver. Were you on probation? Well, back to jail for your probation violation. Did a bunch of you go in together to buy a bag? You know, people do that, to go in together to get a quarter pound or an ounce. Well, that's a conspiracy. You all conspired. Were you in your car? Well, there's a DUID. Do you have a child? If you have a pot plant in your house and a child, I guarantee you they will take your kid and give you a child endangerment charge that day. Did you use a cell phone or text message someone to get your bag? Illegal use of a communications device in the commission of a federal crime. Do you own a gun, firearm in the commission of a drug crime? These are all sorts of ways you can end up in jail or prison for pot that aren't just simple possession. And I'll say, another one of Sabet's lines is, we did the analysis and we only found that 0.3% of people in state and federal prisons are there for marijuana alone. Oh, well, let's see. There's 1.5 million people or 2.3 million people in our correctional system. 0.3% of 2.3 million, that's about 16,000 people, isn't it? When they give you a little number like 0.3, don't let them get away with that. Say, so 16,000 people are in jail. 16,000 people are in jail just for marijuana. Here's the final slide. I'd like to close with this one. Because one of the best ways we can fight these guys is to show how marijuana prohibition is destroying this country. And I did this as an experiment the other day. I have these, I do the news every day on my show, and so I have these little games I play, like when a pot grower gets sentenced, I look up in Google News for child rapists in that area, and I guarantee you I'll find you a child rapist who got a less sentence than a pot grower within 6 months of wherever that sentence was handed out. I have a similar thing with child endangerment. When they find a pot plant and you've got kids, they take your kids right then and they file child endangerment charges. This just happened to a woman named Lindsay Reinhardt, a friend of mine in Idaho, who's a medical marijuana patient, and she's trying to get their initiative passed, right? She was up in the woods camping, comes back into cell phone range to get all these text messages. Oh my God, the cops are here. Oh my God, they took your kids. Wow, right? They took her kids away because she's a medical marijuana patient. There's a whole big story behind it, but basically, pot plant, kids, child endangerment. My little game with that, the same day they took her kids in the neighboring county, Middleton, Idaho, a woman left her 3-year-old and 10-month-old in the car, went back to the house to go get something, forgetting, of course, that she had a loaded 45 in her car. The 3-year-old gets a hold of loaded 45, shoots the 10-month-old in the ear. Kid's okay, I grazed him, right? But was there a child endangerment charge? That woman get her kids taken away? No. No charges filed at all, just an accident. So apparently you can leave your kid with a loaded 45, that's not child endangerment, but leave them around a pot plant, oh my God, that's child endangerment. So I'm going to end with this slide here, and this is, it was Gil Kurlikowski, our drug czar, was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, talking about his, we support treatment. We're not about the drug war anymore. So he was going off on this, and I thought to myself, when they talk about the arrests and the effects of the drug war on people, I thought it might be interesting to see who gets arrested. Who does this affect? And what I've got on the screen here, up along the top are bars that represent the pot smoking population of Wisconsin. 83% of the people who smoke pot in Wisconsin are white. About 9% are Hispanic. About 9% are black. The bottom bar represents the population of Milwaukee County. About 54% of the people in Milwaukee are white, 19% Hispanic, 27% black, African American. And then I went to a website called who'sarrested.com. You ever see these mugshot websites? You can look up who got busted in your county, right? So I thought in Milwaukee County, let's look up who got busted for less than 25 grams of marijuana possession in the 2-month period of January and February of 2012. And I'm going to line it up with the white, the Hispanic and the black, right? So like we'll take 10 white mugshots and we'll put those up, right? And then we'll take 10 Hispanic mugshots and put those in the Hispanic section. And then we'll take 10 black mugshots and put those in the black mugshot section, right? And then I'll just keep adding mugshots to give you an idea of the racial balance of the arrests. The only problem is I only have one more white mugshot. This is 2 months, January and February, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Another problem is I only have 5 more Hispanic mugshots. But I got 10 more black mugshots. Oh, who am I kidding? Move that over. I got 30 more, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 138. 2 months, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 11 white mugshots, 15 Hispanic, 138 black. If that's not the drug war in a nutshell, I don't know what it is. Thank you for your attention. I'm Russ Belville.